Hey, my beautiful listeners, we are back with season 3 of The Beautiful Side of Grief, and I'm your host, Helen Morris. My incredible guests continue to share their own personal stories of grief in so many different forms and how they have managed to find the positives and beauty from their experiences. And I hope by listening to these honest, heartfelt accounts, you can find the tips, insights, resources, and strategies you need for where you're at here and now. And maybe one day even find a beautiful side to your grief like I have. So share away, as I would love this podcast to reach as many who need to hear it as possible. Don't forget to check out the episode notes as well for more information and links. Plus the energy healing I do that changed my life forever. And this season, I'd also love to share the affirmations and meditations I'm working on, so stay tuned for those. Right now, though, my thanks for listening, and let's check out who this week's guest is. In this episode, no one has died, yet they may well have, because actually the stages that you go through when you end a long relationship are pretty much the same as those you go through when someone dies. Denial, anger, bargaining, sadness or depression, and acceptance. There are so many hidden forms of grief, and the loss of a long-term relationship would have to be pretty near the top of that list, I think. Though it could also be moving away, the loss of a job, or developing a serious health condition. Even though no one dies, it's still understandable to grieve the life that you had prior to this event happening. My guest today, Brenda De... Now I'm going to say your name wrong. Can you say your name for me?
Brenda De La Barrera.
Okay, I'm going to give it a good go, but
Yeah,
please forgive me if I muck it up, okay? Brenda De La Barrera is based in Mexico, where she studied fashion, though she's also into anything related to self-improvement and is a self-confessed avid learner. She used to be a King concert goer pre-you-know-what and is an animal lover. So I don't know about you, but I think anybody who loves animals is a pretty good person. Brenda is sharing her story today to inspire you if you or perhaps someone you know is in a similar situation, and to follow your true self and envisage a better future and find meaningful answers. As always, I'm grateful to have you listening today, and it is my hope and intention that we will provide you with some wonderful insights and takeaways, and may your journey be filled with love, light, and hope always. Brenda, so wonderful to have you with me today, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Not at all. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
We don't have too many Spanish speakers here, so that's not a language we're used to. And, our poor Kiwi attempt at speaking anything Spanish often is way off the mark.
No, you did good, actually.
Brenda, so let's start with, what is your favorite concert of all time? Because I know you're an avid concert goer.
Oh, probably my favorite concert ever. It's been the end run of San Diego Warped Tour. It's just like this emo kid thing that I used to be when I was in middle school. And so they announced that they would be finishing it up. And I decided to go by myself to San Diego. So that's exactly what I just did. So I went, and it's a massive concert. So it was a blast. I totally enjoyed it. And I met a lot of good people there. So it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, I just thought, it's nice to get the insight behind the person. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you for asking.
So, death of a relationship, especially one like yours that was 12 years long. I know from my own experience that we can't compare the two, but I get that there's a huge emotional and physical pain that you experience. Even if you're the one making the decision, there's a longing, there's feeling like you're numb. You may even be still fixated on that person. Yet the big difference that, unlike death, you can often see that person again. So share with us what ending a 12-year relationship was personally like for you. And feel free to give us some background to it, like how you met and so on.
Well, we met. I mean, it's a big deal breaking up this relationship because I'm only 29. So, like, we're taking consideration that I've been into this relationship for most of my like young adult life. So basically, we met in middle school and we were good friends. But we had this idea, like, because our birthdays are so close together. I'm born June the 1st and he was born June the 2nd, but he's a year older than me. So we always had this idea of like we were meant to be and we were something special from the beginning. So I think we were really, I think we both were really attached to that idea. And it was hard to let go of that. And so I think for me, like before the pandemic, I was still, it was something I wasn't even like thinking about it because I was really happy in my relationship. It was a really good relationship. We had like we never had any issues. We never had like big fights or anything. And that's something I think we might eventually come to like discuss as well, because I also thought that because we didn't have any arguments or big fights, everything was absolutely right, which wasn't completely like the thing. So, and well, yeah, coming into the pandemic and being into this situation, it ended up like showing us that we were kind of like done with our cycle together because we grew apart, our priorities changed, and it was never like a big situation where we were unfaithful or something awful happened. We just like were really like tugging and pulling one another to like opposite places.
Thank you for sharing that. I also like what you say about coming into awareness that it's never too late to be brave and change your life if you don't like where it's headed, because that's exactly what we're talking about today. It's actually recognizing that you could be happier, that there could be something more than what you have. And going into this relationship so young, yeah, I guess you were caught up in this fantasy of what you thought you both were rather than the reality of living it. So that's an interesting thing to get caught up in. If you were the one letting go, I imagine your grieving or your thought process would have started well before the relationship actually ended, did it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my process was about a year and a half almost. Like I tried my best, and I think we both did our best with the like at the most of our abilities, but eventually like that was where it had to end for us to be in friendly terms. So we wouldn't go. I was very set on not like taking times off because I thought that would only lead to like possibly, you know, more trauma and heartache. So I was like set on the idea that once I said it was over, then it actually be over. So we're not planning to get back together and all these things.
Okay. So was your partner aware that you were going down this path, or was he just thinking everything was fine? And then you kind of, maybe it kind of came out of the blue for him?
No, it definitely didn't came out of the blue. Because I started going to therapy myself and like healing and doing all of this, like several things that I needed to try for myself, like EFT tapping and other like tools. So I was like at some point feeling really disappointed in him, like because of some actions he had taken. And I asked him to go to therapy, like couples therapy. And he was like, no, I don't think we should go to couples therapy because that's only for people who like proper hate each other. And I was like, no, that's like, I'm asking that we go so we don't end up like hating one another. So he knew, but I think he was also he would never thought that after 12 years, I would actually have like the guts to say like, hey, this is not working and go. So I think at the beginning, it was very much like I was telling him how I felt, but I wasn't being met with like, he wasn't taking it seriously.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe he just thought, oh, you'll get over it. It's a phase you're going through, perhaps, and didn't actually realize that this was something really major for you. So,
Yeah.
what were some of the other signals that you experienced that were indicators that this relationship wasn't going to be a healthy, wholesome one for you to continue with?
Well, I think for me, one of the main things was I'm very like direct and open, and he is a bit more reserved. So, unfortunately, during our relationship, he took my character for like as an excuse for himself. So whenever he didn't feel like doing something, he would, instead of saying like, "Hey, I'm not into this," or whatever, like getting invitations and stuff like that, instead of actually declining them because of him, he would blame me.
Oh,
So
okay.
people around him wouldn't actually be too happy about me, and they would actually be mean and like that kind of behavior. So what I thought was that eventually, like, it would probably lead me to a life where we would probably go down the traditional cookie cutter life of getting married and having children. And I would like spend my whole life being the bad guy in everyone's eyes.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a life that I wanted to live.
Yeah. Do you think that you are at a different level of awareness to him as to what you're wanting and expecting out of life? Because many people are probably like him and go through that cookie cutter life that you just explained, quite happy, maybe having wishes and dreams, but just saying, okay, that's for somebody else. This is our life. This is how we're going to do it.
So I think the thing is that I started doing all of these healing things and like going to therapy, and I think I wasn't being too respectful to his process because like I wanted him to like come into this awareness and like
Yeah.
pull him into that. And it was probably not his time to do so. And I kind of felt like I caused myself suffering because I tried so hard to do that work for him, which is like inner work. It's not, there's no way
Yeah.
anyone can like push you
Yeah.
around for that. So I obviously, actually, when we broke up, and because we spent quite a few days after we broke up together and giving back our stuff, and because it was like a really peaceful and friendly breakup, I actually did apologize to him for that. I told him I was sorry because I had like seen the best in him, and that I was sure that there was so much good in him, but I acknowledge it was not my work to put that out into the world.
And I think that's such an important thing to understand that, it's everything comes from within us. We can't go looking for it, for the changes on the outside or from somebody else or from something else, that actually it's all about what we're doing inside of us. So, wonderful that you recognize that. And I'm really, really pleased that you managed to have an amicable dissolution of your relationship. But tell me, was there any of those classic grieving signs that either you or he went through after you actually made that decision?
I think I went through most of my grieving during the relationship because also, like as I mentioned, with all this healing process, I think the more I healed, the less we had in common. So I think he went also through his grieving process, but I think he is more like attached to like physical things and stuff like that. So he would go and buy like a new Xbox or something like that. And so I think that was his way of coping. And I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah. So, what have the implications been for you? I mean, it's a big decision to make. It's everything you've known for most of your adult life. And then you've actually taken yourself and put yourself in a situation where you're pretty much on your own now. Maybe you've got, support around you, but, you've gone from being in a relationship to being on your own. How has that been?
Well, it's actually been interesting in a way that I wouldn't have expected, because I feel very at peace with my decision. So like whenever I see like beautiful pictures of like couples on Instagram, I'm just like happy for them. I know like I have gone through that, and I had like the picture perfect like relationship in a way. And it was a really good relationship. So I have no regrets about like the things that didn't happen. So it's been really peaceful. So in a way, like I've become like more open, and I'm just like lighter in a way. Like my friends keep telling me that they're happy for me, not because we broke up, because they see me doing well. So I think it's been a really wholesome process from beginning to end, because we've done like the things the best way we could.
I've heard, and I talk about this also, is after you go through a major event or a traumatic event or a life-changing event, that you have that awareness that sort of drives you towards what we call your true north, where you're truly, authentically yourself. And quite often we don't realize that all the sacrifices we've been making for others or for our jobs or for our situations that take us away from living our true self. Is that what you feel now, that you're able just to truly express yourself and be yourself with others, which is what is making it easier and lighter for you to be in this situation now?
Absolutely. I think that's a really great way to explain how I'm feeling right now. Because also, he was a really good guy, but he was very mild. So I would also be like considered more intense or like angrier, or, whatever expression at the situation, because he was so like chill apparently. So I think now that there's no one, it's like I think in a way, like in comparison, when you have like brothers or sisters. So if your brother is like the athlete and like really outgoing, if you're maybe not like, you may not be shy or anything, but compared to that other person, you may look like way more shy or more introverted than you really are. I think that's like the situation with me and him, like compared to one another. I would always seem like a little crazy, which I'm not, but it was like a fun like dynamic we had. And I think now I feel like free of those like impositions.
Yes. Okay. So what do you suppose were the toughest emotions that you had to deal with leading up to it and actually making that break?
Oof, definitely letting go of the certainty of the life I thought I wanted, because I really thought I wanted to be his wife and I wanted to have his children, and like detaching myself from that identity and that certainty was really tough at the beginning. And also, I think at the beginning, I felt like he was the one that was like pulling away from me. And then it actually came to me sitting down with myself and my emotions and realizing that I was doing like that as well for him. So we were like really going different ways. And I think that was really, really painful for me, just realizing that.
Did he have any false hopes or hopes that even though you said this was it, you're finishing, that you could get back together again and rekindle what you had?
No, I think he always knew, because funny enough, it's a conversation we had when we were 18 and 17 at the beginning of our relationship. And because we witnessed our friends breaking up and getting back together and like harming one another with that behavior, we always said, like from the very beginning, that whenever we broke up, it would be for good. So it was something that was like established. And I think that also led us to like have such a long relationship and maybe never stopping to like question whether we should keep going or not, because we were so set into the, if we break up it's forever, that we never actually took a pause to like a breather and say, hey, are we doing the right thing? Do you still want the same things? And we weren't having those like hard conversations.
Yep. So I know you live in Mexico, and I'm just interested to know, is there any cultural implications or pressures around this that you perhaps experience? Because I know that 12 years, you get to know both sides of the family very, very well. So did you feel any sort of pressure from family?
At the beginning, I thought my parents wouldn't take it like the right way because they saw him as like another son, I guess. So the thing is that I had to speak to them and tell my parents like, hey, I'm not feeling well. Like I'm constantly sad, and I'm actually like I was getting really anxious from our relationship. I was losing hair, and I was like getting like lots of like gut issues and stuff like that because I was so dysregulated. So I actually tried to take this matter into like to my therapist, and we created a routine so that I could like handle my anxieties and stuff. And I did well for like most of that. But like the fact that I had to do so much to manage my anxiety was also like something that was like taking a toll on me. So I think my parents saw that and they were like, hey, we like him, but we love you. So whatever you decide to do, you have our back. Like we have your sorry, we have your back, and we're gonna be like there for you.
No, that's fantastic to have them supporting you like that and understanding. Let's talk about your anxiety, because when that first started to develop, did you know that it was connected with your disease about your relationship perhaps not being what you needed it to be? Or had you sort of developed it for quite a while before those bells started saying, oh, maybe this is because I'm unhappy?
No, not at all. Like I have PCOS, which is a condition where like my ovaries don't really like work that much.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like hard or anything on my body. But I wasn't like before the pandemic, I was doing everything right and eating right and exercising and everything. And when I started like losing so much hair, I was like, oh, maybe I should check it with my doctor. And then I went and had like an appointment, and she was like, no, everything is fine. Like there's like your everything on your exams feels right. So there's nothing to worry about. But I couldn't sleep well, and I would have like anxiety for me, because I know it's different for everyone, but anxiety for me feels like a huge hole in like my gut. Like it's like no matter if I'm like standing or sitting or laid down, I just feel like a ginormous hole there. So it was so uncomfortable, and I couldn't get rid of it. And it was constant, and it wasn't like related. I couldn't like link it directly to him because I would have it when I was with him, and like even if he was not home, or so I could never actually like pinpoint the relationship that it had to my anxiety. So that was like hard on me. And then in March of this year, so I made like a super strict diet, and I went into a PCOS program to like improve, because I lost my period for I only had like 2 periods in 2020. So
Yeah.
I went into this diet, and it was like a program. So they had like a Facebook group and everything, and everyone was doing amazing. Like girls were like writing that they had like lost weight, or like they were like having like very clear skin and stuff like that. And at the beginning, I thought that it was really like because I saw like no improvements whatsoever. So I thought that maybe it was like maybe my body's taking longer to recover, blah blah blah. So the thing is, the program ended and nothing happened for me. I didn't lose any weight. I didn't stop like losing my hair and everything. But then I went to another home we have in the in Mexico. It's like 2 hours away. And I hadn't had the chance to visit that home for like the last year of pandemic. And I went only with my parents and a cousin, and my period came back. So
Wow.
that was the point where I noticed, like, no matter what I eat, no matter how much I try to manage my anxiety, I still have like the biggest stressor like sitting next to me every night. And it wasn't like I'm not blaming him for that, but it was
No.
definitely, he was a big factor.
I think it's important to understand the effects of stress over a long period of time on our bodies and how it manifests physically. And we often don't even make a connection. I mean, I know for me, had a very traumatic childhood and grew up as a real perfectionist type personality, and I was so hard on myself. And I had chronic illnesses that I was looking for solutions on the outside for. And it took me a long time to realize and make the connection that actually it was all the stress and the pressure I was placing on myself. And once that released, once I enabled that, well, understood that and then let it go, oh gosh, everything started returning back to normal, balancing itself out.
Yeah.
So is that what you're experiencing now? Like, have you felt the whole shift physically with your body and with your anxiety? I mean, have you still got that now? Or?
No, I definitely saw an improvement. Like once, because like the whole breakup story was, I was away at this other home with my parents, and my period came back. So I had like all this whole like thought process of I need to take a decision as soon as possible. So I sat down with my parents and I told them, hey, I'm going back home and I'm doing this on my own. I would like some privacy. So please give me a few days. So my parents stayed at our other home, and I came back and talked to him. And I was taking emotional intelligence classes those days. So I actually had class that day. So I sat down with him and explained him like, hey, my body, like because he knew of all of my symptoms. So I told him, and I was like, I think we're not doing like we already before, like prior to that, we already had one conversation like a month or two before, when we had like questioned ourselves, like if we were doing right by being together, and we cried, and we kind of like, we were still very much trying to like to stay in our relationship. So it wasn't a surprise for him when I told him like, hey, my body's doing this and I think we should really like stop here. And so yeah, everything has been getting back together. Like my energy levels are like completely different, and my body is recovering. So yeah, I think that's part of the reason I feel so at peace with my decision.
Great. So let's talk about the resources that you went searching for to try and help you while you were still in your relationship, and those that had helped you are those. So what sort of resources or techniques or whatever type of guidance that you sought, what really helped you and what was effective for you?
I think the first like resource that I had available was my therapist. She is an emotional, like, sorry, she's a core therapist, which stands for like corporal therapy. So she helped me manage my emotions through my body and like try to move it and everything. But she was also really respectful with my timings. Like she never like pushed me to notice that it was actually my relationship causing all of this situation. She was always like really like walking me through this whole process. And also I like seriously looked for every possible like tool online. I got into EFT tapping, and I would tap every morning, like grounding exercises every night before going to bed. I would also go into these emotional intelligence classes. And I would try like back flowers. I tried everything in my power. And those are things that I'm still using now because I feel really reassured by using them, not because I feel like I need them the way I did.
So explain for us what emotional intelligence is all about. How do we understand that? How is it going to help us in our own lives?
So for me, basically, it was becoming aware of my responsibilities. So my responsibility to how I'm feeling and how I'm probably making others feel with my behavior, and like discerning which part of me I should like take care of, and also to setting better boundaries, because I think that is something that has brought like really a lot of wellness into my life, like knowing what belongs to me and what belongs to others.
Often we don't recognize what we're putting out to others, do we? Like even just our body language. It's not even so much what we say, but if it is what we say, then sometimes we don't even realize the tone we're speaking with to others. We get frustrated, and then we have this whole aura happening, of frustration around us that other people are picking up on. So
Yeah,
is that the sorts of things that you came to understand?
yeah, I came to understand like that I didn't have to react to everything because I
Yeah.
used to be very reactive. And now I can just like have a pause and realize where things are coming from. And also when someone is telling me something that probably like maybe makes no sense to me, to realize that it's not something that I did, but something that they're
Yeah.
handling themselves. And so leave that outside of my realm of responsibilities.
Yeah, we don't have to take everything on board ourselves. I was very, very guilty of doing that for many years. Also, how did the likes of EFT, like tapping and grounding, help you? What was the purpose of those?
The purpose of EFT was because I do EFT with a YouTube channel. So the name is Brad Yates, and I think he has like really good resources. So it would be depending on how I felt that day, I would just adjust to that. But one of the my favorite ones is Let Go and Let God. And it's funny because I'm not a very religious person at all, but that would make me feel really at peace if I felt like really anxious. So I would do that. And for grounding, it was actually grounding exercises, sorry, were like a must do for me, and they're still part of my routine because it's like a way for me to clean like the energies of the day if I went to the store or if I did something that was like emotionally exhausting in a way. And it's the best exercise for me to get rid of that hole in my stomach when I had anxiety. So I
Yeah.
got like really like they feel really safe for me, and they make me feel safe in my body. So that's like a practice that I try to continue.
I like that. So tapping is about rebalancing your body, isn't it? So you use a tapping technique on your forehead, under your eyes, and your hands and different parts of your body, don't you? Your chest
Right.
and things. And depending on the sequence and how you do it is aligning different parts of your body. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, and that you have like a purpose when you're doing that. So
So you're
it's
setting an
basically,
intention.
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, that's a great explanation.
Great. Yeah. So this is good. And you just use what's online on YouTube. So
Yeah.
you didn't actually go to anybody to take you through that. You just use the online resources via YouTube. Great.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll grab the link to that, the person you mentioned, and
Absolutely.
we can share that in the episode notes as well, just in case somebody else is interested in doing it. Because I know that, it's usually not one thing, it's a combination of a whole set of things that help you find yourself again, find that happiness, find that core. So I know we started off talking about your relationship and how important it is, to recognize what's happening in your relationship and to find that place where you have that awareness that you don't like where it's headed. And so let's really talk about that, because I really want people to understand and recognize that they themselves might be in this place right here and now and just thinking, okay, this is my lot. This is just what I have to put up with. What would you say to people who are not feeling 100% fulfilled with their life as it is? I know we're going to have challenges, so we can't always have this perfect, happy life. But what would you say to people?
Well, I think, like, from my experience, and I know it's different and we all have challenges, but I think, are all more supported than we think we are. So when we take that step and we think that something is going to be like a big impact in our lives, it's probably going to, but it's not going to be as bad or as good as we think things are going to be. So it's great to be positive, but I think I would advise people not to idealize like something, like say, once I leave this relationship, I'm going to be fulfilled and happy. Or on the other hand, like, once I leave this relationship, I'm going to be miserable and I'm going to be so sad, because nothing is ever that deep in terms if you have the decision to make it. I'm not talking about like things that we cannot change, but I think when you have the chance to take a decision, you could definitely take that with a grain of salt. Like the idea that you have the strength to do things and that you are capable and that you are supported.
And it's not about, just deciding my life's not great at the moment and I'm going to bail out of this relationship, because you didn't do that. You actually went through a lot of work beforehand to try and make it work, to try and do what you could to get to that point where you were feeling satisfied with it. So I think that's really important to understand. So we're not advocating that people just say, okay, I'm not liking this and bail on it. There was a lot that went into that. But let's also talk about the role of communication and how that is so important in relationships, because I think what happens is that we get familiar and we forget the importance of communicating well with people, and especially our partners. And we take things for granted, and then there can be misunderstandings. But also into that equation is that we are both growing. And so you always need to actually be able to come back and regroup and see where each other is at, don't you?
Absolutely. I actually saw recently a TikTok video that said compatibility is season based, and that made so much sense to me. I think
Say that again.
Compatibility is season based. So it's like in this video they were saying you guys were both caterpillars and you kind of felt like you belong together because of that. But now that you're becoming something else, you probably, like, that other person could be a moth, which is nocturnal, and you could be becoming a butterfly, which is diurnal. So I think definitely love is amazing, but love is not enough in a relationship. And partnerships take so much more. It takes kindness and courage and trust and commitment and having hard conversations, being willing to take that step.
And I think it's the appreciation that everybody comes from a different perspective as well. So just because you have one perspective doesn't mean to say that your partner is going to be completely on board with that or understand where you're coming from. And so you need to understand how they think, how they operate. And like you said, you didn't understand that your partner, you were trying to get him to do all these things to, bring him up to where you were in your level of awareness. But actually he wasn't there. And And actually, you need to recognize where people are at in their understanding of things or their willingness to do things. Just because we want change doesn't mean to say they do. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's understanding all those things. What about the theory of attachment? You know, that was quite important for you in understanding what was happening with you, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I try to learn as much as possible about relationships because, I mean, this relationship being my only serious relationships, because of course I had boyfriends before, but I've never been with someone for 12 years.
Yeah.
I like recognize that I'm a bit of an avoidant, and I try to become more empathetic to him because he was like, he doesn't have a secure attachment either, because it's really hard to find someone with a secure attachment. So he had an anxious attachment, so of course we were like pulling and like we were pushing each other's wrong buttons, so
Yes.
that was complicated. And I think we also, on Valentine's this year, we actually tried to connect again, and we actually did the test for the love languages. And we actually came to the realization that we were kind of withholding the need of the other. So for instance, my first love language is like physical touch, and he kind of wouldn't be so much into that. He, like, whenever I would ask him to like hug me or stuff like that, he'd be like, yeah, but I mean, not like wholeheartedly. And his love language was quality time, and I would actually have a hard time providing him of that. So we kind of did our best with the tools we had, but came to the realization that it had to be over.
Yeah. So also talk to me about the role of nonviolent communication.
So this is a video as well that's available on YouTube. I will provide you with the link. So I started because in my like growing up, I never saw people communicating non-violently, because it was also
What
like
does
kind
that
of
mean?
blaming one another or like pushing
Shouting?
responsibilities. Yeah, yelling and stuff like that. So I didn't want to do that in my relationship. So I was like looking up like how to best communicate with. I think my search was how to communicate an issue to someone. And this video came up and I was like, this is brilliant. And I tried it. But there was also, that's the theory. And I wasn't met with much like response on his side. And I mean, I understand. I don't blame him. He hadn't gone down the path that I had gone. So
Yeah.
we were at just like different points. And I guess it was like no one's fault.
But I think it's what's really useful about understanding that and looking at those types of videos, even if the other person does get really reactive and respond from a place of anger or denial or frustration or whatever it is, you can actually hold your place much, much better and not be so reactive to their emotion. And I think that's the key to it, because that's something that I've learned, is that I am the owner of what I feel. So that, I know, in my life helped me just relate to people better and not be so reactive, and also to understand who owns this. Who owns this emotion? It's them expressing themselves. So let me allow them to do that, but I don't have to own that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you reinvented your whole routine to try and cope. And I think this is really key, regardless of whatever type of grief you're going through. So tell us what reinventing yourself looked like for you.
So I decided to make myself a habit tracker with things that I knew I like, that I loved, and they would help me to feel better. So part of my habits included the tapping, sleeping 8 hours or more if possible. What else? Dancing. And dancing, I mean, just like literally blasting a song that I love and just like jumping around it. It's not like I'm a real good dancer, but I do enjoy like feeling the energy flowing through my body. So also reading and language learning. So I've been trying, I wanted to get the best out of this situation. So I started doing it in around August last year. And now I've continued doing it and I've seen like really good results for myself. But I don't intend to like tell people like, oh, you should like change your life around just because you're like feeling sad. I know sometimes someone may not have the energy to do that, and that's totally fine. I mean, there's definitely, I do it monthly, so it's on my wall, and I color it like by day. And there's definitely been weeks where it's been not very colorful because I haven't felt like doing anything. But I just try to meet that with kindness and like go easy on myself because I know I'm doing the best I can.
Oh, such a key phrase there. Treat yourself with kindness and know that you're doing the best you can. I love that. That is key to anything we're doing in our lives, any situation. That's a bit of gold there. Thank you for sharing that. So do you consider, like, did you recognize that this whole process was a grief process? What was your definition of grief? Like, did you just think it was when people died and that was a reaction to it? Or did you, along the way of doing all of this learning, say, hey, this is a grief process?
I think it came to me along the way to notice that most of the things that I have been through, like denial and anger, a lot of anger on my side, it was definitely part of a grieving process. So I think because I have never had like a massive loss in my life, thankfully, it was hard for me to understand that what I was going through was actual real grief. And I was being really hard on myself, like beating myself up on why am I feeling this way. And also, like, I really just wanted things to be as they were before.
Yeah.
And like, I was causing myself a lot of suffering, like with that desire in mind. Like, I think wishing things were different because I think suffering comes from not accepting the reality. So, like, trying to fight it with all you have to make things different than they actually are.
Such good insights. And I'm so pleased that you've been on this journey, because that's certainly going to help you down the line with any new relationships that you go into, because you've already done a lot of this really tough, insightful work already. So, there's the 5 stages of grief of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that we're all so familiar with. But, I've heard that a lot of people now have extended that out to 7 stages of grief. And I'm just going to go run through them because I think this is really important, because at first there is that shock and denial of what you experience. And then there's the pain and the guilt that you're feeling like that, or whatever it is you're feeling. And then the anger and bargaining, which you just spoke about, which is so prevalent. And then you can get sad and depressed, but amongst all that, and you can go through those all meshed up, nothing's linear. And you can go through it again and again and again. But at some stage, you reach an upward turn. And then when you reach that upward turn, you're ready to work through it, to finally get to that. And it's not a final stage, but to get to that stage of acceptance where you say, okay, I'm accepting this reality the way it is. And I think what you've described, does what I just described fit your experience with what you and your ex-partner went through?
Yeah, I think definitely acceptance was a big part of it. Just realizing that things were different and that we would probably have to take different paths. And I think also telling you about this has been really healing as well as part of my process. So thank you very much for that. And also, I had like one of my teachers, my emotional intelligence teachers, because I told her as the day unfolded that I was like really sad that I would go into class, but I would have my screen off. And I told her I broke up this 12-year relationship. And she was, hey, so I was met with a lot of compassion on her side. And I felt, held space for me, which was very important. And she told me that love actually never disappears. We just like change the way we relate to one another. And that made me feel so like so much peace. And I was like super grateful for that. And I told him that. So I think it was something like, it was one of the last gifts I could give to him. Like, hey, I'm still gonna like care for you, but we're not gonna have the life we thought we would.
Yeah, such a brave, bold, courageous move. And I think this is what this life is all about. It's like recognizing those fears, facing them, and then taking that step forward to address that fear. And it doesn't mean to say you're always going to get it right, and it can be incredibly painful to do it. But I think that act of bravery of just being brave enough to take that step forward and face that fear is the key thing, because otherwise we always just end up staying where we are. And this is what we've been talking about. So I am so very, very grateful that you have shared all these wonderful insights with us today about how we can recognize that the end of a long-term relationship can be just as devastating as physically losing someone. But I want to finish up before we sort of just wrap it up completely. I want to know what's the best thing that's happened to you so far today or this week.
Well, I think lately things have been really going upwards for me. So I have a friend coming, and she is from Germany. She's gonna stay here for the holidays here in Mexico because she spent a year here during high school. And it's like knowing she's far, but still like feeling her so near has been amazing. And I have really wonderful friends all over the world. People who are checking on me at like 3 a.m. because like they're doctors and they're working their night shifts in London and stuff like that. So yeah. I feel really, really grateful and really supported.
That's lovely. And what is your proudest moment to date of what you've achieved in your life?
Oof. I think probably how I handled this breakup has been like my proudest thing, because like I do have a university title and stuff like that. And of course that would be much easier to show on social media and like brag about it. But I think this whole process and the way I carried myself through it, it's the most proud, like the thing that makes me more proud, sorry. Because it's been really like challenging, but I've also, I think I come like stronger out of this whole situation. And
yeah, I feel
really that. Sorry.
You go.
No, I really feel very proud of that. And of course, I'm not gonna like add that into a resume, but it's definitely something that I know I have within myself.
That is something so special and so important. And it's, titles and letters after your name and that can be really impressive and that, but they don't always fill your heart, do they? And make your days joyous. So yeah, I'm really proud of what you've done and the way you handled that breakup. It sounds like you did a magnificent job with it. So
thank you so much.
Congratulations. So when your day is not going well, it turns to custard. How do you pull yourself out of those moments and turn them around?
So I just learned with like my therapy and all the last couple of years to just allow myself to feel my feelings, because I wasn't used to that at all. I thought I had to be brave and like have a straight face and not like be emotional, because that was really encouraged growing up. Like my parents would be like, hey, this girl doesn't cry, she hits, like she gets I don't know, bumped or something, and she like scrapes it up and keeps walking. And I've learned that it's okay to like maybe like sit down and realize that actually someone bumping into you, it's actually hurtful, and being kind to myself. I think that's the most important thing I'm getting out of this process. Like the realization that it doesn't actually matter how the outside world treats me. It's really important how I treat myself and how I hold space for myself.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yes, that is the most important thing, because from that, everything else flows. That's great.
Absolutely.
What would you like to leave our listeners with? What takeaways would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I think I would really like to encourage people to take a moment for themselves and like recognize how far they come regardless of where they are, because I think we are all like living through these weird times, and sometimes we kind of like beat ourselves up with this not getting a promotion or not doing whatever, and not recognizing that we are living in like really particular times for the whole world. And I would also like to tell anyone who's going through a breakup or something where they may have a say on that, things are never as good or as bad as we imagine. So it's really important that they have their own backs, and that they really get to the point where they feel like they have themselves. So it doesn't matter who is there or who isn't, if you have yourself.
And strong in your own skin. Yeah, that's really good. And something that I live my life by is that 85% of the things we fear never, ever, ever eventuate. And of the remaining 15%, there's a very small percentage that is ever catastrophic that we need to worry about. So when we learn to live our life like that, knowing that let's just give it a go. Yeah, I'm scared, but let's just give it a go, because the chances are I'm going to be able to step through this, and I'm going to come out the other side probably feeling better about myself and what I've achieved. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Brenda, thank you so very, very much for taking the time to join me from your beautiful land of Mexico. One day I hope to get there.
Please
and
come.
I'll definitely look you up when I do. And so I just am grateful for you sharing your insights on what this journey was like for you, and just being so open and brave about that. And and I just wish you lots of good things going forward, because you've certainly done the work. You're deserving of it.
Thank you so much, Helen. I really, really appreciate the chance of having this chat with you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link, or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button, and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.